we emerge from coronavirus, we need to make Broxtowe a safer place for people to visit. We need to get here buzzing with activity again. That's why today I've been pleased to visit Broxtowe and hear from shoppers, retailers and visitors. I've listened to their ideas how to make town centres a safer place to be. Their views will be crucial as I work hard to develop my police and crime plan, which will come out in the autumn. My plan will be unapologetically tough on crime and antisocial behaviour. It will leave no stone unturned in our fight against petty crime and vandalism in our town centres. I will work hard on a range of measures to make it difficult for those to seek to cause issues. And I will continue to push the police for more officers on the streets as we work hard to make Broxtowe safe.
Good evening everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for my Broxtowe Have Your Say event. This is a series of events that I've been holding. I really want to hear what you want to say to me, and I'm listening. I was elected as your Police and Crime Commissioner in May on a pledge to level up policing across Nottinghamshire, to invest in visible frontline policing and to be tough on crime and to put victims and residents at the heart of our policing priorities. In taking office, I have a duty to issue a police and crime plan, and this will set the direction for policing in Nottinghamshire for the next 4 years. My plan will be based on 3 simple priorities: preventing crime from happening in the first place, improving the police and partnership response to crime ASB, and supporting victims and communities to be safe and to feel safe. So it's all about preventing, responding and supporting. First and foremost, I want to prevent crime from happening in the first place. I want to spend more resources in dealing with the causes rather than the consequences of crime. I've already invested in a range of crime prevention measures that are enabling us to do this, including in Broxtowe, funding Pint-sized theatre to deliver online sessions for Year 7 pupils, covering topics such as sexual exploitation, alcohol and bullying. I'm also looking to invest in custody schemes to help divert more young people from crime, improve referrals and treatment outcomes for those with substance misuse, and to do more in schools to re-engage with particularly with vulnerable people. My second priority is to ensure that our response to crime is the issues of greatest concern to communities. And this is where I really need your help. I want to know what are the main crime and community safety issues in your area. I want to hear about your experience of the police in Nottinghamshire, and I want to know what we can do better. And I can promise you that in developing my plan, I've been looking to increase police officer numbers in Nottinghamshire and to improve how visible and accessible they are in our community. I'll be working with the police and other partners to ensure we're making the best use of our tools and powers so that you can see real and tangible improvements in the response to issues of greatest concern. My third and final priority, but it's really important, is to better support victims of crime and communities to be safe and to really feel safe. We have some excellent victim support services in Nottinghamshire, particularly those supporting victims of domestic and sexual abuse. But I want them to be better. I also want to ensure that all residents have the confidence to report crime, safe in the knowledge that action will be taken. I'm looking at a range of options to achieve this, but closer working with the criminal justice system is absolutely key. I want to ensure that my plan helps to deliver swift justice for victims and brings more offenders to account. I've already invested in a number of services in Broxtowe to support victims, including Escape the Trap. This is a project supporting young women who are sadly experiencing domestic abuse. So these are my provisional priorities for Nottinghamshire, based on the information I've received to date and the conversations I've had with local residents, including Broxtowe, which, as you know, is my home. But I want to hear your views this evening. I want to know whether you think these priorities are the right priorities for Nottinghamshire. And I want to hear about the crime, community safety issues that are affecting Broxtowe. And I can assure you that the feedback you provide today will be used to help shape my plan. So I encourage you, please take the opportunity to tell me what you think and what you want to see for crime and policing in the local area. So tonight, I'm delighted to be joined by your Neighbourhood Inspector, Simon Riley, and your very popular local councillor, Richard McRae. Now, Richard McRae has offered to ask the questions on behalf of the community. We've already had some pre-submitted questions, and he's going to ask those questions to us. But there is an opportunity for you to put questions in the chat, and if we get a chance, we'll answer those too. So, Richard, what's the first question for tonight?
So thank you for inviting me as well, it's an absolute honour. So the first question, and there's quite a few questions, and I actually think, I know they've come from different areas, but they're quite relevant to all over Broxtowe. So they're really good questions. So the first one, what is the Commissioner doing, or can do, to stop those from using dark alleys to deal drugs? And that's been sent in by Jeremy Lester from Kimberley.
Jeremy, thank you for asking the question about drugs. Drugs are a real issue in our society, and the causes and the solutions are really complicated. I recognise the impact that drugs has on individuals and communities, and my plan will have a really big focus on drugs. In my manifesto, I'm absolutely committed to tackling drug dealing, and I will honour this pledge. So if you think about my preventing, responding and supporting, preventing, I'm investing in drug treatments across the county to ensure those who need help can get it. Also preventing, we need to do so much more education to prevent people starting to take drugs in the first place, and we're doing some projects in Broxtowe on that. Responding, absolutely committed to more drug enforcement operations. I want to target the dealers and make sure that our police have the resources to do that. I'm sure the Inspector will talk more about what we're doing in Broxtowe. And where there are issues we need to know. So I've got a real appeal to you, please report stuff. You know, then it will get acted on. Over the last year, there's been 46 drug warrants issued. Class A drugs have been found 30% of the time. There's been 12 cannabis big one grows dismantled, and some of those have been that big one. I mean, it's, over 1,000 cannabis plants have been destroyed, with street value over £825,000. So if I had a hand over to your Neighbourhood Inspector, and you could potentially mention Operation Larkspur and Operation Hader, would be really helpful.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. I'll come on to the two operations that have just been mentioned very shortly, but there's usually two aspects, if you like, at least two aspects to tackling a particular drug problem. As the Commissioner says, it's something we recognise as a particular problem in society. That's not to say that Broxtowe's got any worse a drug problem than anywhere else in the county or indeed the country, but it's something that we're alive to, and something that we're aware that fuels, for instance, acquisitive crime, in some cases violent crime, and causes concern within the community. So what we would always look to do around reports of drug taking, drug dealing, and then the issues that causes is to build up an intelligence picture. And for that, we do rely on public information, people coming forward, feeding us that information either directly to the police or through elected community representatives such as Councillor McRae, or even direct into the PCC's office. Other areas of reporting, such as online reporting, to Notts Police website, Crime Stoppers, anything like that where you can get that information to us, that will then help us start to build up an intelligence picture of where the hotspots around the dealing are, such as the alleys that are mentioned in the questions, and whether it's impacting on a particular area or a wider area. Once we can develop that intelligence, then we can start looking at being proactive, and proactive actions against the dealers are really the key to enforcement around drug issues. And that's what we've set out to do with Operation Hader, which is focused on Eastwood, and Operation Larkspur, which is focused on Stapleford, which are essentially the two biggest drug hotspots on the borough. And these two operations have been running now for over a year, with a great deal of success, as the Commissioner has mentioned there. A number of drug warrants successfully enforced, quite a significant amount of both Class A and Class B drugs taken off the streets, and a number of custodial sentences handed out for those that were involved in peddling the drugs onto the street. So that has all come about as a result of us being able to build up that intelligence picture. That's an ongoing process. It isn't something that we suddenly say, right, we've done the job here because we've locked that dealer up or we've dismantled that cannabis grow. It's an ongoing process, and we rely on that public information and that engagement with yourselves to be able to give us the information to be able to act upon it. Alongside that is some partnership work that we do with the local partners, such as the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, the local authorities at Broxtowe, the town councils, and this really gives us an opportunity then to look at the geographical features which make a particular area susceptible to drug dealing. So we talk about the dark alleys. You know, do they have to remain dark alleys forever? You know, does it need to be an alley? Can an alley be closed off? If it's a public right of way, how can we improve the safety around that? Can we improve the lighting? Can we improve CCTV? And that's where we tap into our local authority partners, because that isn't a police role. That's something that they can help us with. And working together, you know, we are resolute that we will tackle the problems of drugs in Broxtowe. And as I say, through these two operations over the last 12 months, we have had some significant success with it.
Thank you very much. And we do talk about this a lot at the Community Safety Board and at the, well, it's such a big issue, and we have to do a partnership response. County lines is an issue around here as well, and I think it's worth a bit of an appeal. If you spot something that you think isn't right, please do report it. If you could tell people what to look out for with the county lines.
Certainly. I mean, county lines is obviously, you know, something where, for those that aren't aware, a drug line can be operated from out of a county. They parachute people into an area to deal with drugs on behalf of somebody that's living remotely, which makes it a little bit more difficult to target the upstream dealers from those that are dealing on the streets. County lines is usually focused on vulnerability, and particularly at risk of people who are vulnerable in the community, living alone, have got any sort of, for instance, learning difficulty or disability in the living, which makes them vulnerable to people that might want to exploit that, either through the premises or through threat and fear, and asking them to deal. Young people, quite often disenfranchised young people, dare I say it, people in care, young people that have grown up through poverty, that have suddenly had monetary assets, you know, like new trainers, new phones, a big wad of cash that is offered to them to say, just travel to this town, travel to this place, and deliver some packages for us. So if you know anybody that's vulnerable, or you suspect anybody that's being exploited through the vulnerability, you suddenly see one of your local teenagers walking around in the latest designer gear, and you can't explain where it's come from because you know they're not working, then please get in touch. And again, this comes back to what I was saying about building up an intelligence picture. We need to know where the people are, where the vulnerability is, where we suspect people are being subjected and exploited through a county lines type enterprise, for us to be able to, most importantly, take those vulnerable people out of that cycle and give those the safeguard and the protection that they need. But then secondly to that is to target the people that are exploiting them.
I think you're absolutely right when you say about the criminals targeting vulnerable people here.
Yeah.
But, yeah, people, you know, we need to support people to get out of this. Next question.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you've also got Fearless as well, which is something you try to push to the youngsters. Crime Stoppers is brilliant, it's very adult based. Fearless is really good for the youngsters. And some kids that have got new trainers on, they've probably got them off shoe aids, so they're not all got new trainers on.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I know what you mean, but it is important. So yeah, so the second question then. Elderly people live in fear of going out after dark due to young people causing misery on the streets, just hanging around and being threatening. When will we see police patrols like we used to? And that has been submitted by Ron Abel from Beeston, so thank you for that.
Okay. I'm sorry if older people aren't able to go out and feel safe, but that's not what we want. We want everybody to feel safe, and I know that antisocial behaviour it is an issue, but as we spoke about with drugs, it's a joint response really. You know, we're working with our partners at the council, you know, making sure there is stuff for those young people to do. There is plenty of police patrols. I know you've got more police than you have had before in Broxtowe. We are working with Broxtowe Borough Council to engage young people, and we do diversionary activities such as the youth club, which I know you're very involved with. And there's also a multi-agency safeguarding meeting, which those young people, not all young people hanging around are, you know, are causing trouble, but there are some that are at risk of criminal exploitation. So, you know, we need to make sure there's stuff for those people to do. If I could pass over to you.
Certainly, I think it's worth reiterating the point that not all young people are involved in causing misery and social behaviour, hanging around on street corners, and you know, my experience of 30 years as a police officer is that it's a significant minority rather than a majority that are engaged in some of the antisocial behaviour. From a policing response perspective, we are alive to antisocial behaviour. We understand how it can have a detrimental impact on communities, and particularly, again, the elderly and the more vulnerable, and the sense of upset and sometimes fear that can cause. Unfortunately, from a policing perspective, it's not possible to have a police officer on every street corner or everywhere where young people might be hanging out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So again, we are very much reliant on identifying where antisocial behaviour hotspots are. And that will come from reports from the community, again, through not just through the usual 999 101 phone numbers, but from online reports, from that engagement with our social media platforms. And it's really important that we get to know about where the ASB's happening and where these hotspots are. From my perspective as a local policing commander, that then gives me the information, if you like, and the background to be able to deploy teams into an area at the not the expense, but to say I'm deploying them into area A rather than area B, because area A it's got the more significant ASB issues. So it's really important that we get that information. We obviously pick up on things from youth engagement. You know, as the Commissioner says, it's really important that we get into the groups of young people to find out why they are frequenting a particular area. And that's not just from an enforcement perspective, and again from experience, enforcement around 12 to 16-year-olds is rarely the answer. It's certainly not the sole answer. And youth engagement and signposting youngsters into diversionary type activities, whether that's the local youth centre or whether it's a specific youth programme designed to keep kids off the streets and out of criminality and away from the vulnerability that can lead to things like county lines. It's really important that we know where to go and find those kids. And you know, like I say, with the teams that I've got, I have got more officers than I've had in the last 3 or 4 years, but they are a finite resource. They work a shift pattern, and it's really important that I need to know where to put them at any one time so that we can follow that work through. Yes, we will enforce where we need to, and we do regularly enforce, and that involves also working with partners at the council, looking at things like community protection warnings, community protection notices, and parenting orders, for instance. So where we think parents need to be stepping up to the plate and playing more of a part, then we will tackle the problem, if you like, by getting into the parents and saying, you are responsible for your children's behaviour. So there are a number of things that we can do, which aren't always the right, you're arrested and we're taking you to court. And actually, they're the ones that we need to be getting into, and we need that information for, that we can then start tackling the problem more holistically.
Yeah, that's a really good response. And where we can, we want to keep the youngsters out of the criminal justice system.
Absolutely.
You know, and put some wraparound support around those people.
Now, I'd say we've got some good youth clubs in Broxtowe. I mean, I might miss some out here, but you've got Beeston, you've got Stapleford, which I know it's brilliant, I'm sure they all are. Stapleford's a little bit better. But Beeston, Stapleford, Alsworth's got a cracking youth club. There's one in Eastwood, and like I say, there might be some more I've missed out. And they're always looking for volunteers, so if anyone wants to volunteer, come along to the youth clubs and put your name down and that. And it's one of the best things I get to do, helping the kids at the youngsters. They're down at the youth clubs, so yeah, come and sign up with the youth clubs as well. It's engagement.
Can I also do a shout out to all the volunteers who are involved with all the sports clubs we've got as well in Broxtowe, because we have a most amazing group of sports clubs. I mean, I think it's said for football club.
We've got two, we've had a look
but I would much rather people join a sport, you know, join a team rather than join a gang. You know,
Absolutely.
I've been looking to do anything I can to support for those.
I think that's another thing we've missed out on a little bit as well, because we have got some brilliant sports clubs all over Broxtowe, I suppose all over Nottinghamshire. We've also got to cater for the kids that aren't into sport, because there's a lot of them, and not everybody can afford to pay weekly, monthly subs for football or football shoes and that. So we do need to try and do all the things. And if anyone's got any ideas, let us know. We can always give them a go, can't we? So yeah, we've got to cater for everybody.
Yeah, it could be dance, it could be music. There's other things.
Yeah, get break dancing.
You want to do it? Give us a turn.
There's not enough room in the end.
You've got your line now, haven't you?
We do know.
I mean, joking aside, it's going to be an Olympic sport in 2024. So, you know, we're trying to get kids back into it again. So, yeah. You know, I keep saying I'm an old break dancer. Let's get the youngsters into it.
You peaked early.
Yeah, definitely.
Good.
Well, next question. So I was getting excited now. Okay. So the next question is, there have been lots of cars broken into in my neighbourhood. What would the police do about it? Well, sorry, what can the police do about it? And that's from Ahmed in Trow.
I'm sorry to hear there's been break-ins to vehicles. I know that nationally and actually locally we've had less break-ins into vehicles, but when it happens, it's a real pain. Crimes against vehicles, including theft and items from them, have been reducing. But we do have local hotspots. I'm not sure if there's a hotspot in Trow. I'll pop across to get the inspector's view. I'm all about preventing crimes whenever we can, and a real appeal to people. Don't make it too easy for the criminals. You know, make sure that your car's locked. Make sure you don't leave stuff available for them to, you know, easy pickings. And where you can get an alarm and an immobilised fitter, it does make a difference. I know that there has been some issues around catalytic converters as well, which I'll if you'd like to speak on.
Certainly. I mean, the key message here is the first one of the Commissioner's priorities, and that's preventing. Car theft is a relatively simple crime for a criminal to commit. The vast majority of car thefts and auto crime is down to opportunist criminals seeing something that might be on a back seat, for instance, a laptop bag or a phone that's been left in the console, or some loose change, loose cash, believe it or not. You know, your toll bridge money or your car parking money or your supermarket pound. People who are desperate for money or can't keep their hands off other people's belongings, they'll see that, they'll smash a window, they'll force into the car, they'll get it out. So please keep your belongings safe, don't keep them on view in the car. Things like laptops, phones, always make sure you take them into your home or into your place of work. Just don't make it easy for the criminals. You know, and that goes without saying whether you're parked at work, parked outside your home address, or whatever, because, you know, from experience, if it's easy to take, they'll take it. And that includes making sure that your car is locked at all times when you're not with it. I'm sure people will be surprised to know the amount of vehicles that we get broken into that have been left secure. And that comes down to, you know, being perfectly blunt, that comes down to people taking a little bit of responsibility for their own property. In terms of hotspots in Broxtowe, Trow hasn't featured as a hotspot. We did have a recent hotspot in Chilwell. We very quickly identified who we thought might be responsible for that, and we were able to arrest them for other unrelated matters. Managed to get some control and some conditions on them. And lo and behold, that particular little crime scourge stopped. So, you know, car theft, breaking into cars tends to be quite sporadic by its very nature. Occasionally we will get a hotspot, but usually we're able to identify who's doing that fairly quickly. Organised criminality around vehicle crime is something slightly different, and that tends to take a little bit longer and a lot more intelligence for us to target. And it's as with a lot of crimes, it's not something that we very often happen across. We get our results through good intelligence build-ups and building up the intelligence picture around hotspots or a particular crime type. Catalytic converters, we've been lucky in Broxtowe for a number of months now, and that's not to not recognise the fact that there have been people who unfortunately woken up in the morning and found that the cats have been chopped off the exhausts. but compared to other areas of the county, and indeed Nottinghamshire compared to other areas of the country, hasn't seen the upsurge that we have previously. In Broxtowe, we've got a problem-solving plan that's managed by my Neighbourhood Precinct Eastern, whereby we work with victims of that crime, and we offer out a catalytic converter, the theft prevention kit, which basically mark the cat in the kit, and far less desirable for the criminals to steal them. So that's a piece of work that's ongoing, and actually it has been successful, I think, in reducing the number of catalytic converter thefts we've had. We've got a really good partnership with one of our local garages there who have agreed very kindly to fit the catalytic converters for free for those that we issue out to. So again, there's a really nice bit of partnership work there with local businesses and local authorities. The kits were funded by the South Nottinghamshire Safety Board, and similar kits at Rushcliffe and Gedling. They've had similar sort of successes with that. So, you know, I suppose the underlying message is prevention. That's brought it quite nicely back around to the catalytic converters, looking at how we're trying to prevent it from happening further. You know, I can never give you a guarantee it's not going to happen to you, but you can make it a lot less easy for the criminals to make it happen to you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you mentioned people leaving items in vehicles as well, which obviously, if you can not do that, is a good thing. But there's also various websites you can go on. I can't remember the names of them off the top of my head, where you can register like laptops and mobile phones and stuff. So if they do get stolen, there's perhaps a slim chance that you might get them back. So it's always worth people looking at them and registering the items as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, if we arrest people for theft-related offences, the vast majority of the time, post-arrest, their home address will be searched, and quite often we do turn up items of value that were stolen from cars or out of sheds, you know, push-bys, for instance. You know, if they're security marked and registered on a database, then we can check that and we can see, yeah, for instance, that laptop came from that car theft on that date in that location, or that television came from that burglary in that address on that location, and then we can usually then start detecting crimes, and we have more of a chance then of getting those criminals put away for a little bit longer.
Okay, really good reminder actually to you know, get your things marked as well, and we do regularly do bike marking events.
Yeah, we do a few of them, don't we? Yeah.
Next question.
Right, next question. This is very close to home as well. So people talk about gangs and knives a lot in Stapleford, and that's really sad, but it has been happening. I'm worried that my children might get involved. What is being done? And that was submitted by Laura from Stapleford.
Okay. Well, as you know, there's an awful lot being done in Stapleford to help with this. And you know, again, the enforcement's been strengthened by the Operation Reach teams, and we've got Operation Larkspur that's happening in Stapleford too. Also, we have got a violence reduction unit, and it has it's part of the Office of Police and Crime Commissioner, and we are investing into youth and intervention and diversion schemes. I've also secured £676,000 for the youth intervention fund for more work here. Since its inception over a year ago, Operation Reacher has in Broxtowe 117 arrests, 43 drug seizures, 11 weapons, and 15 car seized. So it's about being really proactive to support what's happening there. Pass it over to you, Inspector.
Yeah, thank you. Operation Larkspur was something that was set up in Stapleford as we came out of the first COVID-19 lockdown, when we noticed that there was an increase in antisocial behaviour in and around some of the parks and open spaces, most notably Kings Lane Park, Archers Field being another one. And alongside that, there was a little bit of an increase in youth-type violence, which we thought we could relate into the local drug trade. So Operation Larkspur started life as a problem-solving plan in and around some of those antisocial behaviour issues in and around Kings Lane Park, and it quickly became apparent through the summer that it was becoming a little bit more of a problem. We just needed to invest a little bit more time, more resources, and try and seek some additional funding to try and get on top of the issues. Unfortunately, along the way, In November 2020, there was a firearms discharge on Akins Lane Park, which resulted in somebody receiving, fortunately, non-life-threatening or life-altering injuries. That case is still within the criminal justice system. And then most tragically on Boxing Day last year was the horrific murder of 16-year-old Joe Whitchurch, for which we have now had a successful conviction at court, and that individual is waiting sentencing. That really then started to put the focus a little bit more around what we could achieve with Operation Larkspur, and some of the partnership initiatives that we could pick up there, and certainly the OPCC, the Office of Police and Crime Commission, have played their part there by supplying £25,000 worth of additional funding that we could then use with our design and our crime officers, with the local authority, to start designing out some of the issues or some of the features that were creating some of the issues down in these locations. So just things like increased lighting, improved CCTV in the areas, gave us a little bit more scope for preventing the issues in the open spaces. Running alongside that then was we'd identified there was a link into the local drug trade, and this became the priority tasking for Operation Reacher, and also for the neighbourhoods team at Beeston, which covers Stapleford. And again, through a lot of hard work, intelligence gathering, we then started to build up pictures of where the dealers were, which then enabled us to go and get a lot of search warrants for misuse of drugs act search warrants. And we bounced a number of addresses in the subsequent months, with some good success again. Managed to get a few people that were the thorns in the side put away for a little while. And that, coupled with more proactive activity in terms of our visibility patrols, some plainclothes patrols, managing to obtain the services of the county knife crime team to come in as an out of area resource who weren't necessarily known by the local criminals, has given us a load of success. So I'm going to ask Councillor McRae to just give his view in a minute as a Stapleford councillor, but from my perspective as the local policing commander, compared to where we were 6, 9, 12, 15 months ago in terms of the issues we're experiencing in those areas, we are in a much better position than we were. Now, that's not to say that we think we've cracked it and we're going to suddenly start looking at it because we've done the job, aren't we? Great. It's an ongoing process, and we will continue to do that to keep that level of activity down, and in the hope that and with the express intention of that we never have to go through what Joe's family went through again. Councillor, I don't know what your perspective is.
No, I mean, just to, I like thanking people, so I've got no reason to thank you both here. Firstly, thank you on behalf of the family of Joe, because I know all the work you've done is absolutely amazing, and someone's hopefully going down for a long time. Really sad, but that's what's happening there, so thank you again. Also, thank you to the Crime Commission, because we've got up to £25,000 with Stapleford, so thank you for signing that off. And also thank you to the officers at Broxtowe Borough Council that put all the work in, and they do all the work in the background, and they're absolutely amazing. So it's sad that we need it, but we're very lucky it's coming, so that's that. And let's go back to the question. You're worried about children might get involved. I've got a 16-year-old daughter, and it worries me as well. Again, come down the youth club and see what's going off down there. We've also got an organisation called Joe's World, which is being set up, and that's in memory of Joe. So that's something, if you want to get involved with, get in touch, and you can come along and see what that's all about. And then on Saturday, the 6th of November, if you want to come down to Akins Lane Park, we've got the Stapleford Knife Crime Walk. We're going to be walking from the park down into the town centre, and that's at 12 o'clock, so come and join us. And then we're going to have some guest speakers and stuff like that, so come and see. But if you want to get involved with anything, please get in touch, because we've got to be the eyes and ears for the police. They're not on every street corner, but I always say you don't see window cleaners all the time, and we've all got clean windows, so I know the police are there. Please just get in touch, and the same for all over Broxtowe, not just Stapleford specific, but if Stapleford's the area where you've got concerns and that, come and see us and have a chat. And it's not as bad as it make out on social media, but one person getting hurt is one too many, isn't it? So yeah, we are doing all we can, and we do need to do more.
I would wholeheartedly endorse some of those initiatives that Councillor McRae's mentioned there. It's probably worth mentioning the open day event that we had down on Kings Lane Park back in September, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's really good.
It was really well attended. I know the Commissioner came, Richard was there all day, and we did that again with local partners and other partner agencies such as the Army and other members of the military, the Fire Brigade. So, you know, it's very much worth getting involved with your children and your young people with some of the initiatives we've got going down there, because they do make a difference. They absolutely make a difference. And if I might just to wrap up on you know, trying to say how Stapleford is more safe than it was. And I'll use the comparison with 2019 because the last year COVID's skewed a lot of the statistical representations that we might use. But in Stapleford, since 2019, we had a 15% reduction in all violence. But pleasingly, our weapon seizures are up by 50% on 2019. So that's one of those increases in figures that, as a policing commander, I'm always pleased to see, because it means we've been successful. So going out there, targeting the people that we think are carrying weapons, wherever I see an increase in numbers like that, it means that we're doing what we need to be doing. So we're hopefully that'll give you a little bit more reassurance.
Yeah. And while we're doing thank yous, can I do a thank you to Ramel Davis, who's one of the outreach worker. I mean, you know, how he works with young people and makes it really clear to them that actually by carrying a knife you're putting yourself more at danger, and that you're not protecting yourself by, you know, so many people get hurt by their own knife, and he's done some incredible work, so thank him. And also it's probably worth mentioning Op Sector, if people want to, if the amnesty we have coming up soon.
Certainly. So Operation Sector is the national week of action which tackles knife crime. And Nottinghamshire Police engages with this twice a year. It's usually April and November. It's happening again in November. So what that will see is all the local teams getting involved in various knife crime prevention initiatives, which will range from officers going into schools to speak to children and young people in the schools, through to proactive knife sweeps at some of the parks with metal detectors, targeting known knife carriers. You know, we aim to make their life as supportively uncomfortable as possible, just to try and deter them away from carrying the knives, as has just been said. Statistically, if you're carrying a knife, you are far more likely to become a victim of knife crime. And then the final thing that or not the final thing, but the final thing I'll mention is that every borough will have a knife amnesty bin, at least one on the borough. There will be one at the Civic Centre at Beeston. Our Beeston team are based, so if you've got any knives that you want to get rid of, then it's an amnesty for the week of Operation Sector. Just travel to the police station, please keep the knife safe, hidden and out of the way, so you're not putting yourself at risk while you're travelling. And then just attend the police desk at the Civic Centre, explain to the person on the desk why you're there, and then deposit your knife into the bin. And that'll be one more knife or a number of knives off the streets.
Thank you for sharing that. And we will publicise when that's happening too. It's really important. Thank you.
Right. So the next one. There are lots of problems with motorbikes and quad bikes racing around Orsworth. I think this is all over the place again. It's not just Orsworth, but the questions come from Orsworth. No helmets, speeding, loud exhaust, we're sick of it. And that's been sent in by Patricia from Orsworth.
I've had lots of emails about noisy motorbikes, being where they shouldn't be, scaring people, and quad bikes too. Again, it's a partnership response. As the inspector talked about, making sure there's those dark alleys that aren't appealing to get up to mischief. Where we can, we need to make sure that there's where people shouldn't be riding motorbikes, it's not too easy for them to ride a motorbike. And I'll let you speak a little bit about that.
Okay, it's fair to say that my inbox, mailbag, whatever you want to call it, is inundated with complaints about off-road motorcycling. It's not something that's specific to Broxtowe, it's something that's specific to the county, and again, it's a national issue. And there are a number of causative factors around that, not least of which people who want to go and ride off of the machines off-road don't necessarily always have the legal outlets for them to be able to do that, so they'll go and find somewhere to pursue the hobby. You know, that's not necessarily where they're welcome to do it. The issue with enforcement around off-road motorcycles is somewhat problematic, and you know we are reliant very much enforcement-wise around a specialist off-road motorcycle team. We do have one of those in force, but they are a force resource. They're not a full-time team. They're made up of officers from other neighbourhood teams around the county, and then we as local commanders bid in for their services for our hotspot areas where we have an issue with this. So, you know, with the best will in the world, and being entirely honest about it, I can't have that off-road team every day of the week. I can't have it every weekend, so I have to get in line with everybody else, and you know, I take them when they come. They do have some good successes when they deploy, and you know, recently we've had good successes, certainly in the north of the borough, where we've deployed them alongside the neighbourhood teams with drone support. So the drones are a really good tactical option for us, so that they can be the eye in the sky and then direct the off-road team to points where people can be intercepted coming out of land or going onto land. And it's not an easy thing to do, to be able to catch up with the people on the bikes there, be able to get away. It's always going to be significant that they're going to take risks to get away from the police and detection, and potentially having the pride and joy taken from them. You know, uninsured bikes or licensed bikes, if we catch up with the riders, we will always take them off under the powers that we've got with under the Road Traffic Act. The catching up with them is the problematical bit, and we've got to have the appropriate equipment and training for us to be able to do that. So the way to tackle the off-road issues is very much a partnership type approach, and very much one that focuses on designing out the features which make an area of land or a particular area attractive to the people who want to go around the bikes on it. And I'm afraid a lot of that onus comes down to the landowner. So if, for instance, we've got a field or a particular area where people are frequenting and they're getting in through, as a simple example, through a hole in the fence or a hole in the hedge, then we will work with the landowner to say, well, this is the issue. Why you're getting the issue on you is because it's easy access for them. And then we'll work with them to try and support them to just make that far less accessible. There's some good partnership work that we have done in the north of the county. We've not got the answer to it yet. We've not stopped the issues up there, but we are working with the local authorities, and again we've got problem-solving plans to look at tackling the issue at its root cause. I've been in some dialogue with my counterpart at Erewash in Derbyshire over the issues specific to Bentley Viaduct. One of the big issues we get there is my team can turn up in a standard police car, and then or a police van, the bikers will see them, they shoot off across the land and over towards the Derbyshire side, the Ilkeston end of Bentley. And by the time my team have got around there, they're gone. So there's a piece of work that we can be doing with Derbyshire on that, which we'll be picking up through the next few weeks and months. But my message is, if this is a particular problem, it's not something that the police can enforce the way out of. We very definitely need to be working together to try and look at tackling the whole problem again holistically. Yeah,
but please report it if it's an ongoing issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but you know, report it to the police so we know what's happening.
It's one of them things, like you said earlier, isn't it? If more people report it in, then it becomes a hotspot. Yeah. And when you try and get the bikes out, you've got more figures that can say, look, it's happening in Horsworth, it's happening in Cossall, it's happening in Stapleford, up on the estate, wherever. But if people, I'm sure some people do ring in, people seem to be quick to go on social media and they'll put it on Facebook and other things where they ring in. Well, Facebook's not the police, is it? And Twitter's not the police. You know, they need to ring in, and then you look on your sheet and you've got loads of reports in Horsworth. Yeah. You've got more chance of getting the bikes out. And we was lucky, we had them in Stapleford a few weeks ago, and there was up on the estate and people came out to talk to them and everything. And I think the other one as well is if people know where the bikes are being kept, because it's easier to knock on someone's door and go, got you, than chasing them all around the estate. Because, you know, and I think sometimes as well the councils, and perhaps this is something that we can look at as councils, is when new estates are being built, it's a bit hard on the old ones because they're already there, but new estates, they need to look at, well, if you're building that, it could be used for that. And it's quite sad that we have to do that, but I think, you know, everybody working together, that's how you tackle these issues, isn't it?
It's the preventative stuff, designing it out. And also remember, you know, no number plate, up to £1,000 fine. you know, we can, no, the bike can be taken away and destroyed. And then these are some of these are really expensive pieces of kit.
Yeah, it's don't do it, you won't get caught. Something like that, isn't it? Right, next question. When will we see more police in our local area? I heard there were more officers now, but we never seem to see them. And that's from Lauren. I hope I pronounced that right, in Bradford.
Okay. I'm acutely aware that people love a police officer on every corner. I can absolutely assure you, you do have more officers in Broxtowe than you have for a long time. And I know the uplift has really helped with that, and we are still recruiting to get more officers. I think we need to talk about, you know, some of the hidden stuff that our officers are doing too. I think that'll be helpful for you to talk about.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I've been district commander at Broxtowe now for over 3.5 years, and I've got more officers now available to me than I had 3.5 years ago. And the obvious example of that is the Reach team, which landed a year ago, so that gave me an additional sergeant and 6 constables. All of the response teams are fully up to staff, and my neighbourhood team, for the first time in my tenure, is fully stocked with beat managers. We are still a little bit light on PCSOs. But that's an issue which may be resolved with some recruitment plans for later in the year. But in all, as the Commissioner says, we have more police in Broxtowe than we had before. Unfortunately, policing has changed from the days of Dixon and Doc Green, and you know, dare I say it, at Bill, when we saw people always pounding the beat and you know, a copper on every street corner. And with the problems that we face as an organisation, that society faces as a society, then the way we police has to adapt. So, you know, the days, I'm going to be the days of seeing a police officer on every street corner are gone. They're not going to be there. That doesn't mean to say that if we haven't got a specific problem, or we need to increase public confidence in what we do, that we can't put more officers into an area. But a lot of the stuff that goes on in the background, so with the uplift, what's that enabled to do is with the increase in officers that have come in, bearing in mind 5 years ago we were somewhere in the region of 1,600 police in the force, and now we're in the region of 2,200 police in the force, so that's a significant uplift on the years of austerity. What that enables us to do then is as the officers come through that are trained and come through the response to the neighbourhoods teams, other areas, other departments within the force that are understaffed, such as your CRD departments, the public protection departments, the operational support department, we're able then to increase the staff in there. So the specialist policing roles are also staffed and up to speed. So where the specialist roles are more staffed, that takes some of the heat away from the local policing staff, which means then we have more opportunity then to do proactive operations targeting specific criminality, which is why the likes of Operation Haydar or Operation Larkspur have been so successful, because we've been able to put people into those operations because we've had that time freed up by the uplift. So as an assurance, and as the Commissioner said, we do have more officers. You are unlikely to see a police officer on every street corner unless there's a specific threat, risk or incident which necessitates that. But there are more police officers.
Yeah, and one of the reasons you're a bit light on PCSOs is because we've had some excellent PCSOs who've actually decided to become warranted officers.
Absolutely, I've had, I'm doing my mental maths now, I don't take the boots off. I think I've lost 7, 8 maybe in the last 18 months.
But from my point of view, that's actually a really good win, because we know those PCSOs have got such amazing experience. They're going to be able to hit the ground running as warranted officers. So, and I know we have also some specials who we recently had at the Mass Station, a whole group of specials who've been volunteers. They know what they're getting themselves into, and they're coming, being recruited to be warranted police officers for us too. So I'm delighted. We are having more police officers, but I'm always pushing for more.
I think the roles change as well. It goes back to, like I said, about the window cleaners.
Yeah.
You know, I don't always see them, and I'm only joking when I say it, but I'm sure there's loads of them. I know there's loads of police. I see them all the time. Many years ago, I wouldn't have wanted to see them all the time. You know, but I'm different now. But you know, the days of like PC Reader, which was a long time ago, Mark Jarvis, and more recently Pete Farrell, who's happily enjoying his retirement. I think them days have gone, haven't they? And can you imagine if social media didn't exist, how many police would be out there actually doing something? Because the amount of hassle and work, and I don't expect you to answer that, but the amount, I've seen it, the amount of stuff that goes off on social media that the police have to get involved in, if they wasn't doing that, you know, there would be more doing out there. So if you're using social media, use it a bit better, and then the police don't have to get involved.
But I do have to say how adaptable criminals have been, and we do need to talk about online crime too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we you know, I said at the start of the answer that as society changes, its crime profile changes, the police need to change with that. So, you know, there is an awful lot of stuff that goes on online, you know, from the deepest, darkest recesses of the dark web with some of the horrific child abuse stuff that goes on there, through to targeting vulnerable old people through the bank accounts, right through to the name calling on social media that Councillor McRae's just alluded to. You know, these are all things that 30, 40, 50 years ago, I mean 30 years ago when I joined the police, we didn't have social media, and it was never heard of. So it was easier to put those resources out in the big hat, the yellow jacket, and people see them. Doesn't mean that the police aren't there, doesn't mean that we're not tackling the issues that society provide. And like I said, we are more visible in Broxtowe anyway, because we have got more officers on the ground. So yeah, online crime is one of the areas where the police have had to adapt and throw more resources in.
And I would say, please report. That's my big ask for tonight. And I can't believe, but we've been going at our work. We need to do this again. Because
yeah, definitely.
If you're up for that,
yes.
And please do.
I was hoping to get to the next question. Actually, that's my fault for yapping so much.
So I just wanted to say it's been really great to have you here this evening. If you do have more questions for us, we know feed them in, and also feedback for me. We've got lots of food for thought of topics that have come up. I need to put my police and crime plan together, and I'll be publishing it in the autumn. The plan will not only set my policing priorities, but also the details on the resources that I'll be putting behind that, and how I'm going to be holding the Chief Constable to account to deliver them. And the grants that I'll be making available as well for some of these community groups to help deliver on the priorities. Which, just to be clear, my priorities currently, unless you tell me differently, are all about preventing, responding and supporting. In the meantime, I'm going to carry on listening. Contact me directly if you think anything I need to know, or something you wish you'd raised tonight, or any further information for me. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much to Councillor Richard McRae for joining me, and your Inspector Simon Whiteley. I look forward to working with you to make Nottinghamshire, particularly Broxtowe, safe. Thank you.